The select panel investigating the January 6th insurrection is prepared to immediately issue subpoenas to witnesses who may resist cooperation. This is a break from a previous House investigation, including the impeachment of former President Trump. Representative Adam Schiff says there is a sense of urgency, so the panel will skip some time-consuming steps like requesting documents or interviews and go straight to subpoenas. The January 6th Commission has requested records from several government agencies and social media companies as they work to build a timeline of events leading up to the insurrection. CBS News congressional reporter Zak Hudak joins me now to discuss the investigation. So, Zak, good to see you. How does this approach differ from these other investigations that we've discussed, the House investigations like the impeachment? Why does the commission think that this is necessary to bypass some of those steps that they see as time-consuming?
Vlad, it's good to see you too. This move is really about speed. It's about efforts by sort of factions of the right wing, even here in Congress, to sort of rewrite history of what happened that day. We've had even members of Congress refer to it as a typical tourist visit, which it very much was not. So this committee feels this tremendous pressure to get things on the record, get the facts on the record of what actually happened. Even this past weekend, we had this Justice for January 6th rally outside the Capitol here, which was very small, not much happened, but the point is that's just a continuation of this misinformation. They were saying that people who were arrested for storming the Capitol, for assaulting officers that day, were political prisoners. And that's why this committee feels like they really don't have a choice. The people that they know will not comply, and we have to keep in mind here that they've already sent all of the entities and individuals who they might be requesting information from, they've sent them letters asking them to preserve that information. So they have a sense of who's going to play ball and who's not, and they know already that some folks, such as Leader McCarthy, will not be complying, so they're ready to skip that step altogether.
So Representative Schiff didn't mention or identify any specific witnesses. Have you heard anything about who might be subpoenaed and when?
Vlad, we know that they have requested documents and information from a number of social media companies, but we also know that there are members of Congress. We know that the committee wants to hear from members who spoke with the president on that day and wants to hear about those conversations. We've heard Leader McCarthy say that he had a conversation with the president, so we know that he would be among them, as well as some other members, including Matt Gaetz. We also know that the committee wants to talk to just about anybody who was sort of in the vicinity of President Trump that day to know exactly what actions the president was taking to try to stop things or to actually fuel the fires. So I think we'll probably also see subpoenas go to members of the Trump family and the Trump White House's sort of inner circle, people like Dan Scavino and Mark Meadows.
Let's talk about Harry Dunn. He, of course, as you know, Zach, was a Capitol police officer who was on duty during the insurrection. He spoke to our Elaine Keano last night.
What you saw on tape is what happened. It was as bad as it looked, and even worse in some cases. Those officers from the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department and the U.S. Capitol Police Department, along with surrounding other agencies that were there. I don't have an exact list of all the agencies that were there that were helped, but they are heroes that day, and they did a very good job. And, they saved democracy. It is what it is.
So I guess how critical will be the testimony of members of law enforcement for this commission? It's been something remarkable for me, Zach, to watch politicians who, are for the first time, or at least in recent years, are sort of disregarding what members of law enforcement are saying about their jobs, their responsibilities, and what may have happened to them in the midst of this insurrection.
I think that the testimony of law enforcement is going to play a huge role. We've already seen, I think, a huge chunk of what that'll be in the first hearing when we heard from a couple Capitol police officers and Metro police officers just recounting what they experienced that day. I think the big element here is that the more we hear from those guys, the more it sort of humanizes the incident. And all the members who sit on the committee, all the members in this building, were protected that day. I and all the reporters were protected that day by those officers who were, squeezed between doors and beaten. And I think the testimony of them sort of serves to sober the entire incident and remind everyone that, for a lot of people, it was not just scary as it was for members of Congress. There were officers actually fighting to keep those members safe and getting beaten up and hurt, and one of them actually died that day.
For sure. As you know, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy has threatened the 30 companies, which include AT&T, Apple, and Verizon. Those companies, as we reported, were asked by the commission to save relevant communications with former President Trump. Does McCarthy have any legal standing to do so?
Vlad, it's not clear that he has any specific legal action that he can take. The language he actually used was that the Republican majority will not forget if they hand the information over. So it's really almost a threat that if they take control, they're going to be passing laws that would hurt these companies. We and a number of other organizations have reached out to his office sort of asking about the legal recourse they have and have not gotten any substantial details. So really it seems more than anything is a pressure campaign. I will say the one area where these subpoenas would really be departing from the norm is that a number of them, it appears, are going to focus on members of Congress. That would very much be different. These select committees and congressional committees have many times used subpoena power, but this is very unprecedented to be using it to gain information on the people that sit right there in the chamber with you.
And so how soon could we see complete findings of the January 6th Commission, Zach?
Vlad, I think it's going to be as soon as they can do it. I think they would like to wrap up before the end of the year, and I think the real reason is, as I said, the members of the committee are acutely aware of this disinformation attempt to rewrite what happened that day. And they feel this pressure that if they do not get on the record and sort of reveal to the American people, almost prove to the American people what happened, who was at fault, who caused this, who failed that day, then it's going to be too late. Half the country or more is going to be living in a completely other universe where that was, as Representative, I'm blanking on his name, but as a GOP representative called it a typical tourist visit that day. They do not want a chunk of the country to be continuing to hold that belief, and they don't want that growing either.
All right, Zak Hudak, thank you very much. As always, my friend, appreciate it.
Thanks, Todd.